Raymond Stover, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Noah. Good to see you, man.
Good to see you too. So we were chatting about this just a little bit ago about how we, have known each other since 0304, and very early on at TouchStar, we were some of the first people at that company to, help grow that organization, and then we were just reminiscing a bit on how we used to catch up at like Dave & Buster's or Rock Bottom Brewery or whatever it might have been, and one of the founders of TouchStar, Nick Carpenter, sort of the architect of that software, he would pop up, and Doug Honeycutt, and some of the folks from the Philippines, like you were mentioning, and Barry Mayhew, and I think even Klausner showed up to a couple events, right?
Yeah, there was always a good turnout, interesting people. And it's funny, too, because back in the TouchStar days, it was very stressful at times. The stress level was just through the roof.
So high.
And, you think back, oh, well, those were rough times. But also, in retrospect, when we have those gatherings with the old gang, it was like, we were reminiscing as though they were some of the best times.
They were.
And you definitely, you bond with good people over, challenging environments. And that was, those days with the premise dialer systems and having to go on site. And, and the transition into T1s and the transition into voice over IP. Oh, my goodness.
Oh, my gosh. There's a lot of stories there, right? One of those stories, Rick Morris and I are in the hallway of TouchStar, and we're having a very spirited conversation about asterisks and the open source nature of that project and how it's crap. And I said, well, Rick, we have to use something. We have to use AdTran or asterisks or, multitask gateways or something. We have to do something to convert T1s into SIP, because simply this is coming, right? We knew voice over IP was going to arrive on scene. So we kind of made a big mistake at TouchStar, right? We messed up pretty big because we didn't really have a clear vision of which direction we wanted to take SIP with, right? Then we started to rely on Dialogic's HMP, and the pricing related to what you could get in the marketplace with open source was better than what we were delivering on Dialogic HMP. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, and those Dialogic cards were expensive. They were difficult to support. They were problematic. You'd have to replace them and swap them out. How many times did we have to go out on site? I remember going into Atlanta 2 a.m. in the morning, to go and, get the server up and going, identify what's wrong.
I know. Brainstorm USA. Some of those clients in the Atlanta area.
Back in the day, you were so dependent on the hardware. Now, it's a NIC card and a good server, and some people are doing it with, oh my goodness, they're doing it virtualized.
I know. They lose a lot of latency to the virtualization of it, but I understand that platform, I guess, as well. Especially if it's small PBXs, a couple seats, something like that, a couple phones. You can do a virtual server on that, but it's not going to have. You're just still not going to have great voice quality, right? It's going to be jittery and poppy and delayed.
People want the easy button, and people want to support the easy button, and so those virtual environments are popular. But
they're easy to spin up, right?
Yeah, well, that's one of our differentiating points here, right?
Yeah, we have bare metal hardware. Yeah, which is for us has been, and our clientele has been fantastic. They relied on, and we have good backup equipment in place, N+1 redundancy, cold storage for, hard drives and motherboards and RAID controllers and all that stuff. So we understand that even a bare metal system will have issues from time to time.
Oh, absolutely. Right. Yeah, you don't want to diminish that. But
exactly.
For the voice quality.
But let's say you save 100 milliseconds for every single transaction that exists, or maybe 50 is probably the right amount. Endpoint distances, processing on the server itself locally, and then you eliminate that for every single conversation you have. Or even transaction, data transaction on the server itself that has direct access to the core of processing, RAM, hard drive speed, all of those considerations. We really sort of built the whole stack out with highest possible efficiency related to transactional voice or data packets. That's it.
And it's segmented. It's, it's not being shared amongst many, many,
Right.
many, many potential more users. And then somebody adds another. And then,
Yeah.
it's nice having it segmented to 25 agents per server or so to have that optimal voice quality that,
Yeah.
it's so nice to hear people say, hey, Raymond, the voice quality here is better than anywhere else.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And we've had customers leave, and we've had customers come back. We've had customers leave and come back, which from a vendor perspective it's frustrating to see them go, but it's also, a joy to see them come back. And then you can really build on the relationship more. You guys obviously are competent in what you're doing. We were expecting something similar to the experience we got at My Call Cloud, but it just wasn't as good, right? So we cater to our customers. That's the whole purpose. But you can go with Amazon, or you can go with, a virtual sliced provider, but you're going to get a very Walmart feel, right?
Well, and so many of our clients, when they do come back, they say, well, it's the personal service. It's, you guys care about us.
Yeah.
We're not just a number. We're not just a little fish in a big pond.
Right.
Right. They pick up the phone and they talk to a real person and they get real support.
Yeah.
Right then and there.
And we help brainstorm with their business too. It's not just the dialer technology, right? It's, what are you doing with your leads? What are you doing with your quotas? How are you managing your data? How are you managing, your conversational flow? Are you dropping to in groups? Are you catching, how many times are you calling people? Right. So we do a lot of that type of interaction with our customers, that type of consultative conversation. It's not just, hey, log in and do your thing. Like, we try and get to what do you do and how do you do it?
Yeah. I love your philosophy here, Noah.
Yeah.
And consulting is free. We're here as partners in business.
Yeah.
And what a great, so much great experience and interactions I've been able to have because of that mandate of yours.
Yeah.
And I get to talk with people about different pieces of technology, and we get to brainstorm solutions. And
Right.
that was one of the fun things at TouchStar. It was new and the code was young and people had real needs. And, we were that scrappy, TouchStar company.
Yeah.
And, then we had to go to Nick Carpenter or Doug, and they'd have to, hey, guys, we really need to code this up, and we'll make lots of money.
Yeah.
It's a classic thing,
Oh,
right?
I know. Yeah, I almost, I'm going to call it Keith Bennett. Hi, Keith. Hope you watch this someday. But, Keith was always that notorious salesperson at TouchStar. He would just sell things that didn't exist, or he would sell them on the possibility of them existing. But in truth, he would probably get, most of the time, he would get approval for trying to sell something that didn't exist, right? But then you had the implementation challenges to then push out, like Agent Script Builder, for example, because we didn't have Agent Script Builder for a long time at TouchStar. And in fact, it went through multiple versions and iterations of, what do we want this on? C++, what sort of code base do we want to put that on? And then Paresh Rana, hi Paresh, I hope you watch this someday too. Miss that guy. He would get after somebody else's project. So it was Dave Sampson to start with, and then it was Levi, right, Funk, and then I think Paresh picked it up after that and started to build out that software suite. But yeah, so as a scrappy young TouchStar company, it was challenging, but it was also very rewarding too. And you were saying that, getting on site and doing all the integrations with T1 vendors, and then of course anybody else had their colo environment, so you also had to walk into a you don't know what necessarily, and then getting the hardware delivered broken or not prepared, no operating system installed, the cards were missing, or getting the hardware without cards. All those challenges were things we just had to overcome.
Yeah, it was very real.
very
The suppliers were, coming from different locations, and they're,
I know.
even if they're drop shipping, even with FedEx, you still would sometimes have to wait a couple days.
You would. I remember getting a Delta Dash once. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you ever had this experience, but I had 2 days left on site, and we needed an extra 48 ports of T1 because the T1 card we got was no good. So we needed a 48 port card. I think it was probably a 2 PRI solution. And somebody ran it out to the airport, to the Delta Dash desk, wherever that is, and then they can put it on the airplane and then get it to you. Right. So that's what they did. I don't know what the fee for that was, probably $150 or what, but it didn't matter. If I couldn't leave and collect the check from the install, we were waiting on $40,000 versus a $150 card or a shipping cost for a card. But
yeah.
Listen, there was a lot of good things to learn from that organization as well, like what not to do, how to do it better, how to, manage money differently. So a lot of that stress was just because we were trying to grow so fast, and we were accommodating to that as employees. But, that challenge alone, that one monetary challenge where you didn't know if your check was going to clear or not, right? Not only for yourself personally, but
for the team,
for the business, it was, it felt messy at times, and it felt exciting at times, and it felt super rewarding at times, and then it felt like a disappointment at times, right?
Yeah.
So all of those emotions kind of bundled into that 5-6 years that I was there, but it was good.
Absolutely.
Overall.
Well, when companies take in an auto dialer into their business, that's a core piece of technology.
Yeah.
And then they become so dependent on it because those phone calls are the lifeblood. That's what brings the income into the shop, into that, business. And those agents are depending on it, right? They got kids. They got to put diapers on the babies and food on the fridge, in the fridge.
Food in the fridge.
Yeah. So, those, it's funny how, they were so rough, it's like you looking back, it was the worst of times, but it was the best of times.
I don't know. Yeah. And there was, I do have a story. I'm going to roll into a story. It's fine. Brainstorm USA. I don't think they exist anymore. They had a system of TouchStars, and I think it was 72 seats. There were 72 people at that facility, I believe, maybe a little more.
About that.
And they didn't want storage for the recordings to exist on the server itself. They wanted the recordings to be stored on NAS, on somewhere network attached storage device. Okay. And we're there. I'm there for 2 weeks at least. Then Nick Carpenter comes in, and he's there for a week, and we're watching the system, managing the system, looking at all the levers that you can pull and all the bells and whistles that we have. And even like the developer of our middleware, OTS, came down, right? Because they didn't know what was going on. And this was a big contract for TouchStar. It was a big contract for, like you were saying, the agents that were there. They were going to be able to produce more revenue for their families. Brainstorm was going to be able to produce more revenue for their business. And actually, that business model was pretty nice. It would get a computer into a lower-income family's household. Right?
Yeah, help raise them up.
Get the computers into
technology.
Get technology into households that needed it. I'm sure they were subsidized some way. I never figured that part out. But it came down to actually being on site with Nick, and he happened to notice an orange light blink when a piece of software had an error. And that orange light was on a network attached storage device that was at the top of the rack. Now, Nick and I have had this conversation multiple times because we laughed about it. And Nick's like, yeah, it was crazy. It was just that one moment that you have the awareness to identify this one blinking light with the problem in the software. And he's like, I bet you it's the NAS. And it was.
And what are the chances is I would catch it right then and there?
3 weeks. We were troubleshooting that for 3 weeks.
Yeah. Our buddy Hugh LeBlanc had a similar story at that same facility.
Yeah. He came down too. It was Hugh. So I was going to sort of like quarterbacking the support at the facility and reaching out and getting different resources to come down. I'm like, you're going to have to send somebody else down here. This is beyond even my capability. But I stuck around. Hugh came from Canada, and he did his thing where he was adjusting all the little settings for the dialogic.
He tweaked it. He was a nerd extraordinaire.
Oh,
And
yeah.
he had a cot, right? He was literally
He was there.
camping out in the server room
Yeah.
or closet, whatever that was.
I hope he watches this at some point. Hi, Hugh LeBlanc.
Yeah, been a long time since
been a
we
long
spoke
time.
with him.
It is. I wonder what he's up to.
So tell me, Noah, what was it like when you were starting up My Call Cloud, right? You had clients that were looking for help, and
Yeah.
you started up in your basement, and you had a backup generator. Tell us a little bit about.
Do you want me to go into all that? Okay. So
Well, yeah, tell us some of the good stuff.
there's an old business colleague that reached out, and he asked me, he said, "Hey, can you set up a dialer for me?" And I said, I just been messing with this project called Vicidial. I just got my hands on it. It's probably 05, 06. I was just starting to understand that there was a software technology out there that was a call center kind of in a ISO, right, install. And with obviously there's about a million things to learn about that software. But that being said, coming from the space, it seemed very likely that I was going to be able to pick up this technology, right, the nomenclature.
Well, and in our experience, a dialer is a dialer is a dialer to some extent.
To
You
some
have
extent,
containers for campaigns, containers for lists,
Yeah.
settings for agents.
At the base level. So, I kind of considered trying to do a service for this business colleague, Fred. If you're watching, hi, Fred Arantlik. And he started using Vicidial in my basement, which is bizarre to even say at this point. But I got Fred to the point of loading leads on his own, managing his own campaigns, and then connecting to a telco, getting that telco, communicating well back to the agents. And he only had 4 or 5 people, but it worked. And it worked surprisingly well on a Pentium 3 cream-colored clamshell with, a gig of RAM used to run Windows XP. It might have been Windows 7, or not even Windows 7. Might have been, I'm sure it was Windows XP. It wasn't Windows before that. So, Windows 98, I was going to say. It might have been Windows 98, to be honest with you. And then XP
in a
was
prior life.
Exactly. But getting the ISO to install on that piece of hardware and then getting it to connect to a telco facility and running a database on that and actually supporting 3 or 4 agents was outstanding, or just, well, it was outstanding, but it was also very surprising, right? Getting all that hardware to work, that simplistic piece of hardware.
And it was open source.
And it was open source. But, okay, so fast forward a few months after Fred's been running, then I look at what am I going to do with, growth. I can't just, this one guy's great, but I'm going to start calling people, right? I know a lot of people in the network. I know a lot of people in my network, and I'm going to start reaching out and saying hello and, hey, can I help you out? What do you think about this particular new software endeavor? Do you want to try it? Do you want to hop on board and give it a shot? Anyway, it's probably just about a year into that adventure with Fred. And I'm like, okay, I think I'm going to go buy some servers. And I look on Craigslist, and there's 8 servers, and the guy's asking, $975 or $1,000. And I write him, I said, I have $800 cash. Would you take it? He goes, yeah. So I go buy those servers, those 8 servers, which are, they're HP, they're Dell 1750s. These are old, right? They've already been in service for 9 or 10 years, right? So, yeah. No rails. There's a couple rail kits. So I'm downstairs. I have a ping pong table at the time in my basement. I've got a can of chew, Skull Wintergreen, and I'm up until about 3 a.m. Putting a lab together to connect a dialer, a database, a web server, and a firewall together, right? And I've got all open source. The firewall is running CentOS. I had to self-teach myself IP tables. I had to figure out NAT translation. I had to figure out one-to-one routing inside of the firewall itself, and then install all of that down in a colo called Vitality, which is still there today. It's down in Tech Center, South Tech Center of Denver. And got that up and running. Surprisingly, it looks still like, in my mind, I'm just shocked that that even worked at all. You know, I was talking to another business colleague about something he did early on email, and he with an ISP, he created an ISP, Bill Young. We're going to talk to him on the podcast here in a few months. Anyway, Bill built an ISP, and the ISP had an email server, and he was astounded that the email server worked in any way. He's like, I can't believe it worked at all. Because, I mean, back then, the command line stuff for us now is obviously second nature, and we can look at black and white screens and type commands and do all the things. But for that period, right, looking at black screens and command line interface is challenging and complicated. And what is the binary? What are the parameters you put behind the binary in order to execute the commands you want to execute? You know, so I'm on Google. I'm learning how to do translations. I'm learning how to do pre-route and post-route. I'm learning how to do blocks and drops and, you know, other new chains in the IP tables realm. So it's challenging. It's rewarding, and you get to the point where you actually might be able to put a customer in a colo, in a data center, and that gets pretty exciting. So we got Ring Us Live, Terrell Davis. I actually reached out to him not too long ago and said hello, you know, for Christmas. So I was thinking about him. And he was one of the first customers sort of out of my network of human beings that needed an inbound call center. He needed inbound. So Terrell hooked up for, oh my gosh, I think he was with us for 6.5 or 7 years. But he definitely watched my call cloud grow from there. And then we moved him out of that data center. We were in that Vitality data center, I think, 2 or 3 years. And then after that, we needed just a little bit more redundancy, a little bit more services. We needed remote hands and that kind of stuff that they just wouldn't provide there at Vitality. But good guys there, for sure. I hope they're doing well. So that's it. That's the long of it. Is it was based on customer need, you know, and we've been catering to customers ever since.
And you came from like the construction industry, right?
Mm-hmm. I did. So my degree. What is my degree in? My degree is construction management, a minor in business administration, and it was a really good opportunity for me to learn how to build stuff, which I still use today, but also I got to see like the whole infrastructure back end of how telecom works, right? So that was really interesting. So I built a couple of facilities, one in Cleveland, one in Indianapolis, and they were basically what they called transport facilities. So they would have fiber optics come into the building. They would route through a bunch of grooming cabinets into OC192 equipment or OC48 or OC24 or whatever.
The telcos were interconnecting so that like AT&T could talk to Sprint.
Yep, AT&T could talk to Sprint or XO or, you know, Global Crossing, whatever the names were at that time, right? Because those sort of all consolidated again, and, you know, they're conglomerates, you know, whatever. Telecom is an interesting game. But so yeah, it was a transport facility. They also had battery equipment on site. So it was mostly like relay equipment. They were putting in a Nortel switch. They were putting in a, they were putting in a DMS? A DMS for call. They were putting in a switch in Cleveland to replace something that was down in an older facility. So they put a brand new switch in Cleveland. I'm sure their phone service got much better in Cleveland. But so that's where I came from. And then eventually I determined that, well, I didn't determine, but Quest determined that I was no longer allowed to stay there at the company. It was 2001, 2002, and of course the .com sort of tanked everything, and 9/11 kind of screwed everybody's plans up for the next multiple years after that. So I was asked to leave. Nice severance. Worked on the house that I was living at the time. I put in new cabinets and, you know, did some things, and then went out and started interviewing. Got a job with a general contractor for about 8 months, and then just realized that I can probably just change directions. You know, I'm young enough in my career, and I didn't have a family or wife at that point. So I literally went on monster.com, and somehow TouchStar software had a posting on Monster. And I submitted a resume and was interviewed by Todd Whittick. Not Todd Whittick, Todd, oh my God, Todd.
Plecker?
Todd Plecker, thank you. Sorry, Todd. And he's interviewing me like this. Feet on the table, no lie, just like that. And I was like, oh, okay, this is an interesting interview. And I'm thinking to that you know, in the back of my mind, let's see how this goes. And then that was I don't know, Tuesday, Wednesday or something. No, that was a Monday, I think. Then I broke my leg. I actually snapped my ACL playing roller hockey. Went and got a crutch, and then got a job offer the 2 hours after I got out of surgery. Todd calls me and he goes, hey, would you like to, you know, join our group at TouchStar Software? And I said, I think I would. Would you mind sending me the offer? And he goes, yeah, I don't mind. So I got that offer probably later on that evening, and gave my 2 weeks notice the next day at my general contracting job.
The rest is history.
The rest is history, yeah. So then I just, you know, learned all the things. TouchStar, flew all over the world, installed things all over the world. You know, where was the farthest place it brought me to see? UK, and then Guyana, South America. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Calvert Jones, if you're listening, I hope you are.
Shout out to Calvert.
Shout out to Calvert. Just got back from visiting those guys during March this year, 2024. It's great to see him. Saw the old call center that was there. Saw the gigantic satellite dish that was installed in the building because they were doing voice over satellite, which I bet you now would be extremely good with Starlink, Elon's system. You know, latency is much better.
Multi-home and yeah.
Well, and just the latency itself is just better. So,
as opposed to that technology in the early 2000s, a satellite off of an island.
Exactly. I mean, it worked.
Yeah.
It worked, but it was there was noticeable voice latency there. It's about 350 milliseconds. And when you get that high, you start talking over each other, right? It's like cell phone to cell phone. You start going over each other. Anyway, yeah, it was. It brought me a lot of places, taught me a lot of things, and I think I utilized it for that purpose, and just made sure that whatever I was doing at TouchStar was either beneficial, certainly beneficial for the company, and then beneficial to myself as well. You know, learning something.
Oh, yes, fabulous experience.
Database, web services. I started coding at TouchStar because that's the one thing Nick kind of laughed about. He goes, "Oh, the only thing you haven't done here is code." And I was like, well, I kind of done that a little bit. You know, I figured out the gets and the posts with URL, you know, API things early on. So, but it was good. It was real good. And then I know our customers have definitely reaped the rewards of a lot of that early on experience.
Oh, well, you know, it's funny. Just last week, you know, we were talking, and there's that solution that Noah built. Go grab it out of Noah's directory.
Yeah.
You know, and that was a solution from 8, 9, 10 years ago.
Yeah. 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 I mean, there's a lot of that. So, I mean, obviously it could be rewritten and redone, but the quota management, that was not my idea. That was a group project. And I think Shad actually came up with the core structure for that quota management tool. But that was one thing that TouchStar did have. And a lot of people may not know this, but Vicidial, the Vici marketing brothers in Clearwater, Florida, had a TouchStar system.
Mm-hmm.
And then Matt Florell was contracted by Vici Marketing to build their own dialer, which then they called Vicidial. So a lot of the features in Vicidial and the software that we provide, that My Call provides our customers, came from TouchStar. And people loved the features in TouchStar. The real-time display, the monitoring, the campaign management, the starting and stopping campaigns, adding, deleting lists, list management. The parent-child relationship within campaign management exists almost exactly the same way as it did in TouchStar. A lot of the metrics were calculated in the same way.
Oh yeah, there's echoes of TouchStar and Vicidial. It makes me smile at times,
I know. I don't know if Matt knows that other people know that, but there are people that know that Matt Florell, and I hope Matt Florell watches this someday too.
Oh, we were just complimenting him just last Friday about that the project has really come a long way, and here it's enabled.
Now, Raymond,
we don't even know how many hundreds of thousands of agents are now
millions.
employed.
There's millions of people that use it a day, for sure, that are reliant on that technology
worldwide.
And we're responsible for a couple $100,000 a day of salary, right? The people that run our platforms and our services, right? They're generating income for their families, and we're responsible for that and making sure that it is as stable as possible for those individuals as well. Not just our clients, but our clients' agents. We have some responsibility to them too. So anyway, but let's tell us about your story. Where did you come from, Raymond?
I was down at Texas A&M. I had gotten a philosophy degree, and I said to myself, well, I better do something more than just philosophy. And my wife was still in college, so I went on and got a master's in adult education. But the shtick there was distance learning was just an up-and-coming thing. And so there was a specialization in distance learning. And so I got that. I had the master's degree in hand. My wife was still in college. We still had a young family. Had to have food on the table, right?
Of course.
A roof over the head. And so, although I had this experience with distance learning and video conferencing, that was so much of what I knew about MUXes and, the T1s. I knew the technology. And there was this telecom company, Econophone, that was providing network telephony services primarily for Israel.
Okay.
Is run by a Hasidic Jewish gentleman.
I didn't know the name was Econophone.
Econophone. Well, it was a discount, and it was back in the day. Like I remember, like we were talking not too long ago about the Cisco AS5300s. Where we were doing the calling cards.
Oh yeah.
And that was, he had a bank of 5300s managing calling cards. He was one of those big calling card companies. You go and so at any rate, they had a telephony network, and they had a whole community in New York within, and they needed a customer service operation. And one of his friends said, oh, well, I live down in Bryan College Station, and there's a wealth of talent here, right?
Yeah.
It's a small town with the international university with PhD candidates. And so a lot of those PhD candidates brought their wives, and there was a lot of available employees that could speak Swahili and could speak Mandarin, and and they knew English. So that way, that was sort of the birth of the call center for this telecom. So I'm sorry, I don't mean to make it long.
No, that's good. That was perfect. Yeah.
And so they needed somebody to help manage their Nortel DMSs.
That's right.
They had a Nortel DMS switch in New York, and one in LA, and one in Brussels, and one in Israel. And so I, fresh off the boat out of college, but I knew the technology. I knew at least somebody that walked in their door for an interview that understand what a T1 was, and the bit rates, and a little bit of telephony. So that opened the door for me. And from then, I've been in telecom ever since. Start looking other directions, and then it pulls me back in.
Yeah, listen, once you're in call center or telecom and you're competent, nobody's going to let you get out. You don't get a pass to leave that group or this technology realm, right? Oh, you're competent. Nope, you're staying. Yeah. I mean, there's very few people that we knew at TouchStar that have gone to do something that's non-telecom related.
Yeah, that's all tech skills. 80% of everyone that we knew from those days are still doing tech related work.
Exactly.
The soft skills are.
Yeah, or even in telecom itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of
sales and.
I think there was a couple people. There was like a couple random people on the outskirts that may have done like went to be an electrician or did something totally different.
Heavy equipment. Yeah, I know one guy that.
There was very, very few. Very, very, very few people. Most people just went to another competitor or got picked up in the market space in a parallel space,
Or continued on in a IT-related role of one fashion or another.
Exactly. So that's a pretty good story. And then how did you end up at TouchStar?
So I moved back to Colorado, and I was looking for a job, and on Monster...
Was it on Monster?
I found a lead on like Debbie had posted.
Oh, Debbie Markham.
Yep.
Hi, Debbie.
Hey, Debbie.
If you're watching.
Yep. She's taking care of those folks down in Castle Rock. What a great HR gal she's always been.
Yeah.
But so I go in, and Rick Morris was called out. He was supposed to interview me.
Yeah.
Right, and he was called out. He had to hop on the plane, and so the CEO, Steve.
Yeah.
He interviewed me in the conference room, that same building where you and I first met.
Yeah.
And
where Univision was.
Yes.
Wasn't it
We're
Univision? It was Univision.
Yeah,
right?
Univision, yeah, like their Colorado presence. That's the first thing that struck me as I walked up to the building was
dish.
it was a big dish and then a couple more, and it had the Univision on. It's like unmistakable.
I know.
Yeah, so I walk in, and Steve, I laughed at Steve during the interview.
What?
Yeah,
What did you laugh
CEO,
about?
I don't even know him. I knew he was a CEO, but
Sure.
but he asked me, what did I think could go wrong on an install? And now I didn't know dialers.
Sure.
But I did a little bit of research going in. And I laughed at him. I just started naming off everything I could think of. Right?
Sure.
You got the SQL database. You have the T1. You have electrical feed. You have power supply. You got to have the right equipment. You got to this and it wasn't long after that he's like, Raymond.
You showed competency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And confidence. And he's like, Raymond, when can you start?
Just like that.
It was just about it was
like
right
that.
then and there.
Yeah. That's
I didn't
awesome.
know what I was getting myself into. I didn't
Nobody
realize
did.
how bad it was.
Nobody did. But I think one thing, either it was luck or it was skill by Todd and Steve. They got a really good group of people.
They did an excellent job.
And I don't know if
gathering.
that's just the moon and the planets were aligning for them or what the scenario was, but they got a really good core of hungry people that were talented, that could learn stuff, that had a good technical acumen. And I guess maybe Denver is a place that has that kind of talent, right? But not as many, like, I don't know any other companies that people still get together at Dave & Buster's for 20 years later. Do you? I don't know any of them. So that challenge, right? Those years, those challenging years at TouchStar definitely brought people closer together. For sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I have long-standing relationships.
Yeah.
Because of
Yeah,
it.
me too.
And, you and I we had, when we had gone separate ways and TouchStar slowly dissolved and got absorbed by the Borg. And
The Borg.
the Borg. And, here we are and we come back together. So
I know.
there's still some of us TouchStar folks that are, and thanks to you and my call cloud, some of us are
Still
joined
rocking
back
it.
together and making it happen.
Still making it happen for customers.
And that's the only other thing. There's one characteristic that I think that the Steve and Rick, they brought people together that cared. You said they're hungry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're talented, but there's just a lot of caring in there. And so doing what's right, Steve always said, do what's right for the right reason. And I've always carried that through. I've always thought that's a great value to have. I agree.
He was good at those one-liners, wasn't he?
Superior.
One of the ones he was rattling off as he's walking down the hallway, and I happened to catch him, and I was sitting in one of the bullpens at the time, and I was like, "What did you say? What was that?" And he was like, "The pain of change. When the pain of change is greater than the pain of staying the same, you're going to change." And I was like, "Whoa! I need to commit that one to memory because that's way too logical." Which Steve was very much a creative and a left brain, and also very passionate, but maybe not logical at times. Anyway, That's what he said. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense. And I think he actually got that from a program that he was in. It's just a different program that he had attended. And he had picked that up and committed it to memory. So I then committed it to memory, and I saw it on Instagram the other day. Some gal's like, this quote changed my mind or changed my life. You know, when it's painful enough for you to change, you're going to change.
Yep, there's a reason for it.
Otherwise, you won't.
Yep.
That's it. I know. Oh, good times, man. It was a really good experience. An excellent experience, I would say. Great people. Fantastic people.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah. What else? What else do we got, Ray?
I think it's about time here.
Listen, I always enjoy these conversations, and we definitely should be bringing up more, topic-specific things for things that our customers are going to enjoy, like, SMS and email. So we probably should put some of those things together for next time. And
Yeah. What's up and coming? What's happening?
Exactly.
Absolutely. I'm down for that.
All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you for your time, Raymond.
Absolutely. Thank you, Noah.
Bye, everybody.